Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cavallo Premiere Week. My name is Jeremy Bogart, and I am very excited today to be able to show you what we've been working on this last year. And a year of change it has been here at Cavallo, formerly SalesPad. We rebranded this year. We're launching 3 new products, and we have a bunch to show you as well with SalesPad. The team and I will be showing you a lot of different things over the next few days, and we're really excited to be able to do that. Before we get started, I think it's helpful for us to take a little context and talk about what we do in general. Not just all the cool things, the new products, the new features, but why do we exist? Why is Cavallo here? Why does Cavallo get out of bed in the morning? And we do that because of one thing. The ERP system is simply not good enough. It's not good enough for distributors. It's a great start. It's a great platform for financials. Everybody needs financials. You have to have a balance sheet. You have to have a profit and loss. The bank expects those things. Investors expect those things. They're great ways to run your business, but they are not a competitive advantage. And so many companies are forced to choose. They add CRM systems, they add other packages, and you end up with data all over the place. You end up with fragmented systems, and you end up with lack of productivity, lack of insight. So we are doing something different. We are building a platform specifically for distributors, a platform focused on insights, a platform that empowers your team members to make the best possible decisions at speed. Why? Why is that important? Well, it's important because there are challenges. There are challenges more than there have ever been before. In this last year of COVID, it's really shined a light on the dynamic environment that all of us live in, particularly distributors. There's fierce competition. There's an increased focus on e-commerce and a lack of brick and mortar in some cases. Commodity prices are through the roof. Transportation is hard to come by and expensive. And it's important to be able to make the right decisions across all of those different areas, to be able to adapt to new environments so that you can be profitable. Distributors have an incredibly thin margin most of the time, and it's important to be able to navigate those areas, to be able to change your process so that you can be profitable. So, how do we think about the problem space in distribution and why the ERP system is not enough? The ERP system is a fabulous foundation. Like I said, financials, you need your balance sheet, you need your profit and loss, but there's a lot more than that. So on top of the ERP system, that foundation, we build our execution capabilities. So the ability to do individual tasks incredibly efficiently. Beyond that, we take in our control capabilities. And our control capabilities are at the heart of being able to be nimble. The ability to change your business process, to map to new conditions, is very important when we get to that next level of efficiency and profitability. And then on top of all of that, the ERP system, your financial systems, all of it is only as good as the data that you can get out of it. And so at the very top, we feed all of this information into our intelligence capabilities to be able to understand at a tactical level, at a strategic level, how to be profitable. So, across these capabilities, what does this mean for our products? So traditionally, we have our SalesPad product. So if you're running GP, SalesPad takes care of your execution and control capabilities. If you're running Business Central, our new product Distribution Cloud will handle your execution and control capabilities. And both of them seamlessly feed Analytics Cloud to give you that top-level insight. So, what is Distribution Cloud? To talk more about that, our product manager, Alex Schellhaus.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeremy. Really excited to show everybody Distribution Cloud and kind of what it has to offer. But before we kind of dive into that, I wanted to set the stage as far as our agenda goes today. I want to talk about what Distribution Cloud is, why we decided to build it, and then we'll dive into a demo in there as well. And then we'll get the chance to talk to one of our beta customers, somebody that's already using the application actively today. And then we'll showcase kind of our roadmap for Distribution Cloud, what's coming next over the coming months and over the next couple of years even. So what is Distribution Cloud? Previously, you had to choose between using the ERP's inflexible tools or perhaps implementing a CRM package that lacks many of the features in the data that you really need to manage your customers in your entire organization. Not anymore, not with Distribution Cloud. Distribution Cloud is a distribution management platform built on top of your ERP system. And we believe that fragmenting your key customer sales and process data across multiple systems limits the productivity of your employees and of your organization as a whole. So we've taken a different approach. We turn the ERP into a true distribution management system that allows you to operate at an incredible level through thoughtful features and best-in-class user experience. We use the ERP's core functionality and storage whenever we can. And that allows us to have every user in the organization have access to the information that they need to make the best possible decisions at any time of the day. No synchronization, no timing issues, and no duplication of features. So one question we get often is ultimately why build Distribution Cloud? And the simple answer is distributors asked for it. We conducted over 150 interviews with distributors all over, and we identified some of the most painful business challenges that they were facing. We knew that we had solved the problems before with previous products, and we were thrilled to have the opportunity to do that again. So let's start with sales and customer service reps. And when we talked to sales and customer service reps, they told us they couldn't get the relevant information that they needed at the right time and at the right place. And they had slow access to information. Where are your products? Are they at warehouse 1 or are they at warehouse 2? Where are your products? Where are your orders? All of these questions were really challenging to answer with an ERP alone. They were often asking themselves, can I sell this product today? Am I able to sell it to this customer, or is it reserved for somebody else? Is it my job to tell procurement that, hey, I want to sell this product, but we're out of it at this warehouse? Is it my job to do that? They didn't have the transparency that they needed in order to effectively help run the organization. And the interfaces weren't built with them in mind. They were built with financial professionals in mind. And so as a result, it was often challenging to use. They weren't sure how to respond to customer questions about orders because they didn't have the data they needed about the orders. So why did those problems exist? The CSRs were working in an ERP system that had disconnected information. They weren't presented with the information when it mattered, and they weren't presented with it in a way that was easy to read and understand. Why is this order partially shipped? Well, they don't know. How much of the order has been invoiced already? Do I need to wait for payment? Can I actually ship the rest of the order? All of these questions couldn't be answered by the ERP system. So what was the business impact of that? Well, oftentimes you had unhappy employees. That's really frustrating and hard to deal with if that's your experience. You're always put in situations where you're said, hey, I don't know the answer. And that's really frustrating, and it's taxing on employees. They were delivering poor customer service then as a result, and then having slow response time. And we knew that Cavallo, we could build a people-first application. And so we did. We built a product that's uniquely positioned to solve the problems CSRs face, to solve the problem that sales professionals face in the distribution space. And they were experiencing tremendous challenges around distribution management. So we built a customer search screen, built to highlight the most important information all the time. The information that is tremendously hard to get anytime you're in an ERP system. Or you're going to be looking at many, many clicks to actually get to the system, and we'll dive into that in a second. We built a customer card that highlights critical data about a customer on your phone or on a computer. CSR and sales teams can problem solve with relevant data all the time. They no longer have to wait. We give them the information that they need about a customer so that they can make impactful decisions. There's no more asking, where is this order? Is it in shipping? Maybe. Is it in packing? Hopefully. All of these questions were really hard to answer for a sales team. So with a thoughtfully designed customer card, they can communicate with customers more effectively and ultimately deliver a better customer experience. They can increase sales, and then they can increase loyalty as well. We decided to build a fast and simple quote and order entry screen that's optimized to help everyone enter an order or quote from entering one line item to entering 100 line items. It's always easy all the time. It provides stock and inventory visibility where you need it, whenever you need it. So let's take a deep dive into that with Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez is our product owner here, and he spent a lot of time diving into this. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. So today, I'd like to take a closer look at Distribution Cloud from the perspective of a CSR or a salesperson. So as a CSR or a salesperson, one of the main problems I face every day is being asked questions about the status of an order or an account or a customer, and just needing to provide that information, both externally and internally. Without a system like DC, or Distribution Cloud, I can find that I have to dig through systems that aren't optimized for me to find data that's stored in many different places, or even have to reach out to others to get the answers I need instead of having it at my fingertips. Simply put, I can't find the information I need when I need it. So, to help solve this problem, we've made a number of screens in Distribution Cloud to pull that information together for our users. One of them that I've got here is customer search, where you can go to find information about your customers, their orders, and et cetera. So let's again pretend that I'm a CSR on the phone, and I've just received a call from a customer and they're asking about the status of their order. I didn't quite catch their name, but I do know their phone number, looking down at my phone. On customer search, I see a lot of customers here, and I can quickly narrow that down by choosing to search via the information I do know. So here, I can change from searching by customer name to searching by phone number. And I know that the phone number that I'm talking to is 9182. So if I enter that data, I'll see that my search results are narrowed down to 2 customers. And I know I'm talking to Sarah Towns right now, so this first row must be the customer I'm looking for. Taking a closer look at the data here, I can see the customer name and the customer number, along with whether the customer is active or inactive. Additionally, I can see some contact information about that customer, both the primary contact, their phone number, and their email address, along with some more detailed information like where the customer is located, their payment terms, and even some high-level balance information, so how much the customer owes currently and how much of that is due. To answer the question at hand here, I need to dig a little bit further, though. So I'll dig in to a Datum Corporation and enter our customer card. If you'll remember, the question the customer had for me today was, what's the status of my order? To answer that question, I'll use our Open Documents card, or tab. Here at the top, I see this customer has 3 open documents with us right now, and looking at those documents, I see there's an order and 2 invoices. I think it's probably this order, but I'm going to open it up to get some more information to make sure. And sure enough, this is the order with the 10 chairs and the 7 lamps. So this is the order we're looking for. Right up here, I see that this order is currently in our pick package queue. And based on what I know about our business, if it's in the warehouse and it's getting picked, we should be shipping it out today. So I can pass that information along to the customer right now. Additionally, I can see some other information about the order if necessary, like when the order was entered, the total of the order, or the prices for the lines I'm selling. Now, that question answered, let's imagine that they had some other questions for me, like, hey, what did I buy from you last year? To get that answer, I can use another one of our tabs in the customer card, the Products tab. On the Products tab, we show a chronological list of items we've sold to this customer in the past. So basically, the most recent items show up at the top, and the least recent items show at the bottom. So I can see that most recently, I've sold this customer an Athens desk on April 12th. And then I can also see we sold them a whiteboard and some chairs previous to that. Additionally, I can expand each of these sections to get even more detailed information about how often I've sold that item to that customer. So I can see that just based on these dates on these line items, we've sold this customer the Athens desk 4 times this year, and then a number of more times last year. And I can also see things like what we sold it at, what unit of measure we sold it at, and the price. So very quickly, I can answer all the questions they have about what they've previously purchased, and potentially even start a new sale off of these entries so that I can resell to them. So in summary, just with these 2 tabs, we've aggregated a ton of information about the customer that previously I would have had to use many different screens or tools to get. So thanks. I'll pass it back to Alex to talk more.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Love what we're doing for sales teams. We spend a lot of time talking about what we're doing for CSRs and sales employees at your organization. I want to kind of dive into managers next. We interviewed a lot of managers, and we talked to department leaders from warehouse, sales managers, operations, at every part of the organization. And what we learned was that they had too many things to solve. They had things that they wanted to solve, but they couldn't solve. And they had little visibility into their process, and ultimately the ability to control that process was pretty much near impossible. So as a result, the managers were constantly jumping from point A to point B, trying to figure out, all right, should I do this? Should I do that? And it was challenging to improve. They were constantly reactive. The other thing that was challenging for them is that they had a real lack of a repeatable process. And when we look at why managers were experiencing, some of those challenges, it was often due to a poorly designed process, or there wasn't really any clearly defined process at all. And when they were looking at their departments, it was often hard to identify what should they actually optimize for, what would be the most impactful for their business today, tomorrow, this quarter. And it was really challenging to do that. Should they optimize for customer delay? Should they optimize for profit, revenue? Are they trying to reduce, stockouts? There's a number of things that they could solve, and actually knowing what problems at your organization would deserve the most attention, that was really hard to figure out before Distribution Cloud. The fragmented order information made it hard to also establish a process. Order information about, hey, it's been partially shipped, it's been partially invoiced. Some of that information is naturally really hard to get out of an ERP system. And ultimately, they had a lack of time. So what was happening to managers? We've got all these problems. What was actually happening practically? They had a lack of visibility in where things were, and they were often overly reactive. They couldn't be proactive. If you're constantly figuring out, what should I do? It's really hard to put a plan in place that allows you to improve over a long period of time. And then they were also under delivering on margin. They weren't making the organization as much as they should. And they weren't able to simply plan their days and weeks accurately. We talked to a warehouse manager from the East Coast, and they were running a heavily seasonal business. Think like a lot of sales, this quarter, substantially less sales the next quarter. It was a very seasonal organization. And the warehouse manager was committed to picking and packing and shipping products out the door by, if they had received an order before 3 p.m., they wanted to make sure that they could get that order out the door, with a couple exceptions of really massive orders. Those might be pushed off to the next day, the next morning when they had more resources. But she was committed to getting everything out the door. And with the ERP system as it stood, that was virtually impossible to do for her. She was constantly looking at, where are my orders coming from? Am I going to have a dozen orders come my way in the next 10 minutes? What do I do about that? How do I prep for that? Should I keep the staff? Does somebody want to go home? Can they go home? Well, I don't know. And that was incredibly frustrating for them. Could she stage anything? Was there any orders that were going to be big that she could get ready? She could, partially pick it and get it ready to going so that she could ultimately fulfill that order faster. All of those questions were tremendously hard to answer. So does this look familiar to anyone? When we were talking to distributors, this is roughly what many organizations were experiencing. Just complete chaos from a quote, order, invoice, return standpoint. Their documents were tremendously fragmented. Information wasn't where you need it to be. And we talked to many organizations, and this is exactly what it was like. Orders are here, orders are there. And we've seen organizations that had clipboards stamped, up against their wall, and that was how they organized and managed their process. And that worked for them, and some people knew. They were thoughtfully placed on the wall, yes, but it was still tremendously hard to understand. So it's kind of a little bit like a messy kid's room. I have kids, and if there's a messy room, I can ask my daughter to go into the room and find some random thing, and she's going to know exactly where it is, and she's going to find it. If I go in there and I'm asked to find one specific thing, all right, nope, I'm not going to have any luck. It's going to take me forever. I have to clean things up first. That's a little bit what distributors were facing. Somebody knew where something was. The entire organization didn't know, and that was incredibly painful to deal with. So we built Mission Control. Mission Control fixes that. It removes the process clutter. It removes the ambiguity, and it turns a messy room into a clean one and shows everyone where every order is and why it's there. So because of Mission Control, sales understands what's happening in accounting. The warehouse understands what's happening in sales. And everyone knows their role and how they play a part in making sure that they're able to deliver an excellent customer experience and help the organization thrive. Mission Control allows managers to see how their process stands today, and it allows them to assign responsibility and takes many of the mundane double-check tasks that they were doing throughout their week, throughout their day. So let's take a deep dive into Mission Control. Back to Alex for a Mission Control demo.
Thanks, Alex. Next, I'd like to take a deep dive into Mission Control and workflow inside of Distribution Cloud from the perspective specifically of a manager, maybe a warehouse manager, like Alex talked about. As a warehouse manager, one of the main responsibilities on my plate is making sure that I understand what my team has on their area of responsibility right now and what's coming down the pipeline so that I can plan. Without some sort of tool like workflow or Mission Control, I'm either blind or I'm relying on manual processes or records or just looking out and seeing what's going on. So let's take a look at how Mission Control and workflow can help us with that. The screen I'm showing right now is Mission Control, which is basically a snapshot in time of your business's process. In particular, right now, I'm looking at our order workflow. Over here on the left side of the screen, I've got a list of queues that make up our order workflow. They're basically the steps in the process. And we can see that this order workflow that I've helped make starts out with new orders and order details, where the sales team may be populating whatever details they need to about what the customer would like to buy. And then it moves into pick package and ship package, which is where my team works. This is where we physically fulfill the inventory and send it out. And then finally, the workflow moves into create invoice, where we actually send it back to the other teams to invoice the customer for the order. So additionally, over on the left, we've got a little bit of information summarizing what's going on in those workflow queues right now. So I can see that pick package has 5 documents in it, and the total amount of revenue we're generating from those orders is around $250,000. And similarly, I can see that for the other queues. I've also got these checkboxes over here. What these checkboxes do are allow me to toggle the visibility of these queues and let me focus on what part of the process I care about. So you'll see that I have my team's pick package and ship package queues enabled, along with the order details queue from the sales team. Over on the right, that's configured which of the queues are visible to me. So each of these gray rows here is a queue, And we can see similar sort of summary information. So there's 5 orders right now in pick package, and then I can see the total costs and revenue for those 5 orders, around 200,000 and 250,000 respectively. And each of these sections can be expanded and collapsed. So I can either see or hide the orders in that queue. For each of those documents in that queue, I've got a wealth of information that's been pulled together for me. So over on the left, I've got just some general identifying information for the order. So the order number, the customer's PO number for that order, the customer themselves, both their customer name and customer number, and when the order was entered. Over on the right side of the screen, we've got some cost and revenue information. So the same cost and revenue data we were looking at before, just broken down on a per order basis. And then we build on that and show you the gross margin of that order, both in a dollar amount and in a percent. In the middle, we've got a few more columns that I think are especially powerful that pull together some more aggregated information for us. So this column will, at a glance, tell us how many products we've sold on this order. So without having to open it up, I can hover over this order and see that there are 5 items on this order, and I can see exactly what it is. So this is the order where we sold 5 pedestals and 15 conference bundles, and et cetera. And I can see the quantity, price, and extended price for each of those. Potentially even more useful, we have the related documents column, which will allow us to, at a glance, see where these documents came from and what other documents they're related to. So for example, this order has 1 related document, and if I hover here, I can see that that's the quote that the order was generated from. So I can easily see, reference whatever quote number we were working in the past and any other information about it. This order at the bottom has 3 related documents. And if I hover over that one, I'll see that in addition to the quote we saw previously, there's also a shipment and an invoice associated with this order. So from that, I can gather we've already partially shipped and invoiced this for about $40,000. So given all of that information, both on the individual order and on the aggregate level, I can really clearly see what my team is working on right now, what's in the warehouse. And when we're finished with it, we can move it on so that the next team can do their part of the process. Additionally, I've got the order details here, which I mentioned earlier. So I can either leave that collapsed and just see the summary information, or I can expand that as well and allow me to see what the sales team is working on right now and what may be coming into my team's area very soon. And I can get that same sort of detailed information here. So, in summary, mission control and the workflow that drives it allows me, my team, and my organization to really understand what the current state of our business is and plan for what's coming down the pipe and plan around it. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Alex.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Love what we're doing with mission control. So we've talked about sales, CSRs, we've talked about managers. I want to now spend a little bit of time talking about executives and how we built the application to help them thrive. And we interviewed a lot of executives across, many verticals in the distribution space, and they told us they were struggling in a number of ways with their ERP system. It was really challenging to operate when they just had the ERP system. And one of the most critical problems that came up over and over again was the challenge around managing margin in business rules at scale. They could absolutely manage it at 1 order at a time, maybe even a couple orders at a time, but that takes tremendous effort, and that's all they're doing oftentimes. They had aspirational goals of maximizing profits on an order-by-order basis, but you have to double check. You have to make sure that everything's put in place. They weren't given the tools to say, this is what I want to happen for this segment, for this product, for this market, that allows them to control all of the business rules, to control all of the margin for their organization at scale. So that's all they did. They were managing margin, and they have a lot of other things that they can do. We talked to a few executives that were shipping product to customers that owed them too much money. They were fulfilling orders to customers that ordered them way more than they were willing to let them owe them. So as a result, they were fulfilling orders perhaps that were the wrong orders. They should have fulfilled an order that was serving a customer that purchases with them regularly, that has a higher annual spend, but they were still shipping it to the wrong customer. That was incredibly painful. They weren't given the right tools. And they told us there was no real solution to help them out, not with the tools that they had. Oftentimes the ERP was falling short of meeting their specific needs. So the executives were missing the mark too. They weren't delivering what they needed to for the organization. So what was happening to our executives that we had talked to? They knew they were capable of delivering a higher margin. They knew the organization could be more profitable, but they just couldn't be. You can't concentrate on every single order at the organization. That's tremendously difficult. And they had less than desirable control over any of the business outcomes throughout the entire organization, certainly from a profit level, from a process standpoint as well. Being able to control how your business operates and be able to iteratively improve that. Based on learnings, and you find out something new about your organization, you want to put something in place, put a rule in place that helps prevent all of those challenges from happening again. They couldn't do it. I had talked to one specific executive, and I asked him, how do you keep your orders flowing? How do you keep them flowing through your system at a pace that makes sense for you? And he told me he goes into the ERP system, exports all of the orders, he puts those into a spreadsheet and tells each department leader what they need to do. You can kind of see where that would be a little painful. At any sort of scale, he's tremendously swamped with everything that he was doing. How much time was it taking him? Well, that's what he did. He didn't do anything else. He managed the operations of the business. And with a tool like I'll show you in a bit, he could put those rules in place, those guidelines for his organization, and then he doesn't have to think about it again. The system can handle that job for him. So we built Workflow. We built an incredibly easy-to-use process designer that allows you to define your process and iteratively improve on it. Do you need to add a margin check rule? All right, that's going to take you about 15 seconds. Then you're done with it. You don't have to think about it again. Do you need to define a new procurement process? All right, great. We can do that in about a minute, and then you're done. Need to make sure you're not shipping product out to somebody that owes you too much? Okay, you can define that in Workflow. And you don't have to think about it again. Changes are simple, and the changes are reliable. So let's check out Workflow. Pass it back to Alex.
Thanks, Alex. So once again, let's take a closer look at some functionality inside of Distribution Cloud, this time from the perspective of an executive user. So as an executive at my business, one of the many things on my plate is managing margin of orders and other key metrics of our business. Now, I can do all of that manually, like Alex said, but it'll likely become my whole world. It's everything I focus on. A tool like workflow configuration and workflow inside of Distribution Cloud can help give me back some of that time so that I can focus on running the other parts of my business. So, looking at the screen here, I have a list of workflows that have been configured inside of my company. And I've got one workflow for each of my document types, so order, invoice, return, and quote. A little bit earlier, we took a look at that order workflow. And let's dive in there and take a closer look. Here, I can see all of the queues in this order workflow. So over on the left, I have a list of all of those queues and the order they're organized in. And on the right, I have some more details about how those queues interact and how documents and orders move through them. So I can see that normally, orders will move into picking when they're done being new orders and once we've populated them completely, unless we've got some sort of inventory shortage, in which case they'll move into back-ordered needs purchased so that we can acquire more inventory. Assuming we've got that inventory, or once we do have that inventory again, they'll move into picking and shipping, so the warehouse team can fulfill those items. And then finally, they'll move into ready to invoice, and we'll actually convert this order to an invoice and send it to the customer. Now, this process has been working pretty good for us, but one thing that I've identified recently is that we're letting some lower margin orders come through the flow, and we're either not catching them or we're catching them too late. So I've recently built a business rule inside of my workflow that will catch these orders for me, alert me to them, and let me handle them. So let's go over to the business rules section of the screen, which I can open up with this button here. And I'll see a list of business rules that I have defined for this workflow. I've got 2 of them right now, the gross margin one I just mentioned to catch those low margin orders, and also another rule which will check orders where we're violating the customer's credit limit. We've got a little bit too much on credit for them. So let's take a closer look at that gross margin rule. Here, I can see where I've configured this rule. I've got a name and a description for the rule so that other people know what this rule is doing when they interact with it. And then right below that, I've defined the condition that triggers this rule. So for this rule, we're checking the gross margin percent on the order. If that is less than 15%, it's a low value or low margin order, and we've got to review it. Here, I've configured that this should apply in all of the queues in my workflow. So no matter where the order is, if for some reason the margin becomes too low, I want to know about it and do something about it. I could change this, but for my purposes, this is what I need. And finally, I've set up who has the ability to approve this rule. So generally, I want to catch these orders and I want to look at them, but our business needs to be flexible and we need to be able to sell a certain way if we need to. So in those circumstances, either myself or any of my sales managers can approve this rule. So having looked through all of that, let's take a little bit of a closer look at how we would actually interact with this rule in process. So I'll just save the rule and head back over to mission control. So this screen looks very similar to the screen we had just looked at, with the addition of one large section here. This section, where it says 4 documents need approval, lists the documents which are in my workflow for orders that need approval because they've violated one of those business rules. So at the top here, in these sections, I can see there's 2 orders that need margin approval, and there's 2 that violated the credit limit for the customer. I'm going to look at one of the margin approval documents right now, and I can see this one has a negative 16% margin, so that's definitely something we want to take a look at. Clicking on the row, I can select that I want to review that document to take a little bit of a closer look. And here, it'll open up this window where I can see a little bit more details about that document, or at least a summary of it. I could click in here to drill in and see even more if I need to, but this should be enough for me. And then below that, I see a list of the rules that have been applied to this document. I see both my margin approval rule and credit limit. So it looks like this one has violated both rules. Margin rule approval is sort of clickable, and we can see that credit limit exceeded is grayed out. This is signifying to me that I can approve margin approval, but I've delegated the credit limit exceeded rule to my AR team. So I'll take a look at margin approval, and I'll let the other team take care of the credit limit. Expanding this section, I see that the salesperson who entered this order has left me a note. They're letting me know the customer has been pre-approved for limited below margin sales as part of a larger agreement. So reading that rings a bell for me. Yes, we did have an agreement in place with Cronus where we were going to cut a little bit of a deal here. So I think I'll approve this document. So clicking here, I've checked that I am okay with this. And then just below, I can provide a reason code. So I want to record why I'm approving this so that if I look back at it in the future, I'll know. So we've got a prior agreement reason code set up here, so I'll fill that in. And at this point, down at the bottom, I'll decide that yes, I do want to approve this document. So on pressing that button, we'll get a little alert up here, and we'll see that the order has moved from margin approval down into credit limit exceeded. Here it is right here. So it did that because, as we said, there's still the credit limit issue. So my AR team will take a look at it there. And once they've looked at it, they can either reject it or approve it as well. And if they reject it, it'll go back to the salesperson and they can do whatever they need to correct that order. And if they approve it, the document will go right down here and just re-enter the normal order workflow. So as long as we've got inventory for this order, it'll go right through to picking and shipping. So in summary, business rules and workflow configuration have allowed me to define a process to catch problem orders in my company and quickly be alerted to them, dig in, see what's wrong with them, and get them corrected. So without it, I'm left running this process manually. Thanks. I'll pass it back to Alex.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Love what workflow. So back to our original question of why build Distribution Cloud? And it was really to serve all of the people we talked about today and anybody else that thinks they could benefit from this product, and to solve the problems that distributors were facing and to help them thrive. So in order to build an excellent product that was polished and made sense for distributors all over, we wanted to make sure that we were able to work with beta organizations so that they could test it and use it and provide us feedback on a regular basis. So we've got real world experience for the product. So let's talk to one of our Distribution Cloud beta customers about their experience so far. So OSIS is one of our beta customers that we're going to be talking about today. OSIS is a nonprofit technology services organization that's dedicated to providing expert next-gen healthcare technology that exclusively helps community health centers around the country. We've been working with Tom, who's the Chief Financial Officer at OSIS, as well as Michelle, who's a CSR manager at OSIS. So let's ask them some questions. We met for the first time in April of this year. What were some of your expectations going into that conversation?
Well, we had recently gone live with Business Central, but then we had heard a rumor that SalesPad was working on a Business Central product, so we were interested in learning about that because we really enjoyed using SalesPad when we were on Great Plains, and so we were trying to recreate that experience as much as possible.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you were using SalesPad with GP?
I think the things that we really liked the most about using SalesPad and GP was having different workflows for different types of sales transactions, the ability to set those up pretty easily and accommodate exceptions as they needed to be made, and then also using the sales monitor to have kind of global visibility into the entire document lifecycle of every transaction.
The access to see the related documents, just the overall life cycle of a quote and an order into the PO. Um, that's what I'm really looking for.
What has changed since you started working with Distribution Cloud?
Oh my gosh, it's made a big difference in my world. I can
Yeah.
I can tell you that. It has allowed me from an item perspective to see what items we've quoted to which customers, and did they move forward with it? Did they not move forward with it, and why? It's also allowed me to, when customers reach out for something, to make sure that that product is really vetted because we've bought it, 4 or 5 times and we've returned it 4 or 5 times. So yeah, just really, really an insight onto our items and what customers are buying, um, and why they need them.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
I know that Tom didn't get to really see it, but the mobile app looks really, really neat. I'm excited for you guys to roll that out. just from a visibility standpoint. So that way, when we're, out of the office, um, doing whatever and someone asks us kind of an oddball question, we have the ability to look it up right then and there. I know Tom and I are both very excited about the business intelligence that you guys are working on, um, just to see how maybe that can help us, tweak our own process and really predict customer behaviors. Um, I think that's really cool.
Thanks, Tom and Michelle. Great to talk to you. And we'll talk this Friday. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to send it back to Jeremy to kind of wrap up the Distribution Cloud Day and talk about our roadmap.
Thanks. All right. Some pretty cool stuff we've seen today, right? We got to see some of our execution capabilities, how we handle work for CSRs, how we handle work for managers, and why that's important. And we get to see how all the little things, the time spent clicking here, the time spent clicking there, adds up to a lot of time wasted and a lot of lost profitability. And it's even more than that. You get to a point where your employees actually want to use the software with Distribution Cloud. And I was talking to a sales rep not long ago who was looking at using Salesforce, and they were clicking into the notes, and every single note they had to go click into. Whereas the way that we display notes, you can just see them all at once. So every single time, if you can imagine the amount of notes that someone has to look at during a day, they're doing 2 extra clicks, in, out, and it adds up. On the control side, you can see our workflow engine and all the great things that it does. I was talking to a customer the other day, and they were struggling with commodity prices. And they were getting to the point where they were getting new prices from their vendors on a daily basis. And so they used to have quotes that expired after a month. And now, that just wasn't feasible. They could be paying 3 times as much a month from now. So they had to go into the workflow engine and define a new set of rules. And they were able to do this in under half an hour. They went in, put in rules that said if a quote's over 3 days old, it has to go back for approval to make sure that nothing was slipping out, because that's the difference between profitability and loss on an order-by-order basis. And the ability to define that and to go out and to do it in 5 minutes, it's game-changing. So, now I know what your next question is. We saw all this great stuff. When is it going to cook me a 5-course meal? Or what features are next? So what we'll be focusing on in the near term is a lot more of those productivity features and tools for the sales reps and the CSRs. We'll be going in and we'll be working on tasks, we'll be working on interactions, and painting the picture for what the future looks like. The ability to go out and define the workload for sales reps and CSRs, for the workflow engine to drive tasks back to users so that they know that they're always talking to the right customers, for the system to look at individual customers and understand when you should reach out to them based on their order frequency, based on their average order size. Being able to tie all of that together to really drive productivity at an individual level. So after we work our way through that sort of sales and CSR personas, we're working on a lot of integrations to make sure that e-commerce flows seamlessly into the application as well, into the workflow engine. Beyond that, we'll be working our way into a lot more of the sales rep pipeline, more of the traditional CRM functions that you would consider from the category, and then working our way over into purchasing, inventory, and the warehouse. And so a little bit of a forward-looking statement. We might be moving around. We're being very dynamic. We're being very agile. As Alex mentioned before, we're interviewing customers. So don't take this as an absolute. Things could get moved around, but that's the direction that we're heading overall. Everything that you saw today is what will be available November 22nd. So, in summary, this is Distribution Cloud. This is the game-changing productivity tools, control tools that we are taking to the market. We'll be expanding it very rapidly, but I'm very excited to be able to show it to you today. We've been working hard. The team's done a great job, and I'm excited to see all of you for day 2. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat, and Alex and I would be happy to answer them. All right, ready to answer some questions. If you want to type them in the chat, we'll get to them. We've got a few here already that we're going to get through. So let me select them here. All right, first question. What is the estimated implementation time for this product for Distribution Cloud? Okay, so it's a little bit of a nuanced answer. So Distribution Cloud obviously works with Business Central. And so there's obviously implementation time for Business Central, getting that up to speed and up and running. Distribution Cloud works seamlessly with Business Central. So your setups for pricing, customers, posting groups, all those things are respected. So the lion's share of the setup is actually Business Central setup to start. Things like workflow, that you saw in the video, workflow setup are set up in Distribution Cloud. As we add more features that we talked about on the roadmap, there will be additional setup items. But early on, it's pretty straightforward, and it takes, I think, with our beta customers and other things, under a week,
really quick, yeah,
something like that to get up and running.
Yep. So when we set up OSIS initially, it was, we had that initial conversation of, hey, what type of workflow do you envision? We worked with them to optimize that a little bit to say, hey, maybe this is a change you could consider make. And, it really was probably a week to actually get them all logins and credentials into the system. And then, we're off to the races from there. Now it's time to actually improve and learn. And, but yeah, really, really quick. And, to echo what Jeremy said, a lot of the lion's share of the setup is on the Business Central side. So, yeah. So does Distribution Cloud require SalesPad or GP on the background, or is it a standalone product? So good question. So it does require Business Central, not GP. So anytime you want to use Distribution Cloud, you're going to need Business Central. Kind of as, the way we built the integration is through, APIs and AL extensions. So anytime that, if we want to send data seamlessly, you're going to need Business Central. So right now it does require the ERP system.
Yeah, and so just to reiterate again, completely separate products, does not use any of our business logic or code or anything from SalesPad. Feature parity in some areas and expanding, but not doesn't run SalesPad or use SalesPad in any way.
Yep.
All right, next one here. How long does it take for orders and documents to sync between Business Central and Distribution Cloud? So as Alex indicated a minute ago, it's constructed using AL extensions in Business Central, communicates through APIs. So for the core documents that are being created, or records, customers, items, sales documents, all those things are live. So as soon as you save it in Distribution Cloud, we reach out to the APIs, save it over in Business Central, and so there is no synchronization time. It's live, and the two systems are fully interoperable.
Yeah, just with OSIS again, similarly, like they've created an order, and they can have people that live in Business Central on a day-to-day basis doing certain things, and then they can have people that live in Distribution Cloud. They're all looking at the exact same information, which is really valuable for a lot of organizations. So the next question, is there integrations built for other operational systems like WMSs, TMS, et cetera? One of the, kind of goes back to the root of how we built the application, how we architected it. One of the beautiful things about Distribution Cloud is it's relying on the same data that's in Business Central. Those WMSs that are also relying on the data that's in Business Central. So the systems are going to just naturally feed each other. And then we're all relying on the same data. There's no synchronization. There's no kind of, all right, is it here? Is it there? All of that information is going to work seamlessly. So if it works with Business Central, Distribution Cloud is going to work with it as well.
All right, that's good. Is cloud intended to work with, distribution cloud intended to work in conjunction with desktop, with Dynamics GP, or replace desktop, or a hybrid scenario? So this is a completely separate product. So this would be for customers who are on GP and SalesPad now and want to migrate to Business Central, but keep, those SalesPad, that functionality that you've grown used to, and workflow and those components, or for a company who's, net new to Business Central or already running Business Central and wants to, increase their distribution capabilities. So not really a hybrid scenario. We do have a product which we'll talk about a couple days from now, called Bridge, which links GP and SalesPad to a Business Central company. So there is some hybrid that can happen, but not directly with Distribution Cloud. So we do have a tool that synchronizes GP and SalesPad to Business Central, and in which case, they can work together, but it's not, the Distribution Cloud itself is not a hybrid platform.
Yep. Next question, looking for an example of a rule, a lot of leaders would put in place. I think Alex Rodriguez touched on a couple of them. Margin is certainly going to be a big one. But one of the great things about the rule builder is that it's incredibly flexible. If you want to build a rule off of any random field, we're bringing in a lot of those fields that you can build rules off of. And that way it's just kind of up to your imagination. Let's talk, we can work together, and we can figure out what challenges your organization is facing, and then really design rules that are built specifically for you. And that was really our intention of, certainly having some canned rules that were out of the box you could use. But the conversation was the important part of that. It could be curated specifically for your organization.
With Distribution Cloud, do CSRs have visibility across locations? I assume this is for inventory locations.
Yeah, probably.
And if that's the case, yes, absolutely. So we've done a lot of work pulling, like in SalesPad, if you're used to that, pulling inventory across different locations, being able to see down to the bin level. We'll be adding even more to that around back orders and around serial and lot visibility here in the near future. But even out of the box immediately at launch, we'll have great visibility across different locations.
So we've got a question here about how scalable is Business Central Distribution Cloud. 150 sites, 1,000 users, and the answer is basically, yeah, we can scale. If you have users and you want them in the system and you have a bunch of companies, we've worked with a lot of organizations that have like multiple companies set up in Business Central. We can absolutely work in that regard, and we kind of seamlessly switch from one company to the other and make that really easy. Same thing with users. We'll have security role-based and group-based security that allow you to basically define who has access to what and who can do what in your system. So we can absolutely scale.
Absolutely. Let's see. I have one here that where is DC hosted? Where's Distribution Cloud hosted? The answer to that is a little bit complicated because some of your data is in Business Central. So we add fields and store things in Business Central. We also have our own cloud environment, our own multi-tenant cloud environment that the data gets combined with. And that isn't in a specific hosting site. We have a number of different places we do host and can host. So that'll be, it just sort of depends is the answer. Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. Well, I think we're getting towards the end here. So of our time to be together. Thank you so much for watching our presentation on Distribution Cloud. Please, tune in for our next couple days on Analytics Cloud and on SalesPad. If you have additional questions that we didn't get to, feel free to reach out to your client account manager. They'll be able to help you answer those and get more information.